So please help me welcome to the stage for our keynote this morning, Mr. George Barbic.
Okay. I'll see if my mic works and you guys can hear me. I want to just say thank you, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to get up in front of you guys and have this opportunity to talk to you. I want to thank our host sponsors, both Price Systems and EBS and ProPricer. Those are two vendors, suppliers that are near and dear to my heart. In '87, I was in a parametric modeling role. And Price System, I was trained on Price Systems. That's been a very important tool that Lockheed Martin has used through the years. And even though there were more pricers here, I think that's a great tool, and we've been able to use it from the analytics point, and also recently we've been able to use it with some of our contracting and proposal estimating. So it's been a really good tool, and I like the way Tony has taken the tool and continued to reinvent it. So it's been more and more relevant to our modelers, and it's definitely a key tool in our tool suite. And also to EBS and ProPricer. I was telling Ken, now I'm going to tell you kind of honestly how I feel, and I hope that doesn't work against us when we have to negotiate our next contract with you. And he said, well, maybe, but one of the things ProPricer's really done a nice job. It's been a seamless integration into Lockheed Martin, and it's something that, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later. But it's really prevented us from having to spend a lot of money, developing our own tools, maintaining our own tools. When I first came into this job, a lot of our business areas were looking about going out and developing their own. So if you get 4 or 5 business areas, developing their own tools and maintaining, as opposed to the cost and the effectiveness of ProPricer, it's been a great tool, and we advocate for that tool. A lot of our sub-tier suppliers are using it. That rolls up into a lot of the estimating that we do. So it's been really an effective and efficient tool for us. So, and I'm not getting paid for this. It may cost us and it may cost me later, but those are my true feelings. So, like Al said, I've been at Lockheed for a little over 34 years. The first 25 years, I built a parametric modeling organization. And then the last 9 or 10 years, I've been the director of estimating. And one of the things in this role, it's definitely morphed. And I'll talk about that in my briefing that's coming up. But, when I first came in, we're looking at, new initiatives. How do we improve the proposal process? How do we get more data-driven, fact-based estimating in? And so we were looking at, like bringing some of the analytics and contracting tools, doing things faster that way and driving that. But then over time, and we'll talk about it, things have really changed in this job to be more looking at, are we, developing adequate proposals? Are we developing compliant proposals, and all the things that we have to do? And we'll talk about how the business system rules coming into effect and the thoughts of disapprovals and penalties has really changed my focus, and and it's really changed some of the composition of what we do, and the people that are supporting some of the things we're doing. So I'll get into but before I get into that, I really want to talk to something that is near and dear to my heart. It's being able to have a forum like this for pricers. I don't think there's any forum that I can think of, other than maybe DoD, the Dodcast that they had, which is no longer open to industry, that is for pricers, that to be able to get together, be able to network, and also some of the powerful speakers that we have, having the Shea Assads, the Janet Muscoff, some of the other people that are involved with this, to be able to see firsthand what's coming at us, and hearing from the Shays, and here's what we're thinking about, and then being able to take that back and say, okay, here's how it's going to affect our policies, here's how it's going to affect our products. I think this is a great forum. And the pricing thing is something that's a big concern for me, because being able to keep the stockpile of talent. There's other more attractive ways to get to the top than doing it in pricing. And so I think, the pricers are so valuable. And if you don't have good pricers, you're really going to pay the price for it. And that's something that I've always tried to do is, to mentor people, to make sure that they have a career path, to try to make sure that, they want to stay in it, because you need those people, the seasoned veterans. And I got to give a shout out for somebody like Les Flugum, who's up here in the front, that's worked for 45 years for Lockheed. The work he does, not only with our company, but going to other companies. We had some issues. I remember Northrop Grumman called us and said, hey, we're struggling with this API, and we're doing this with ProPricer. How do you, Les steps up and helps, and we're competimates. But at the end of the day, we want to beat you guys on our technical brilliance or, things like that, or affordability. But, having the tools and being able to help each other, because it goes both ways. And so Les, 45 years with the company, I can't say enough about the work that you do with the tools, and continue on, you and Charles. So he's my hero, one of my heroes, him and Kari Sense. So I'm going to get into this briefing, which is alligators in the water and submitting FAR compliant proposals. So here's what I'm going to go through. We're going to talk about, the defining of the problem, the transparency and the consistency that you need to put in the process as you go through this. Tackling the tough issues, which isn't always the easiest thing to do, and isn't always the thing that you have complete agreement on. Issue resolution, partnering not only with internal organizations, which you're not going to solve from an estimating standpoint. We found we wouldn't, we can go off and come up with great solutions, but unless you reach out and implement those in other organizations as you go forward, it's just not going to happen. We'll talk more about that. The changing workforce. We'll talk again a little bit about tools and parametric models, and then keeping up with the changing environment. And then business system rules, and the cost, which is, I don't know how many of you have been involved, but when you have a disapproved business system, the costs are tremendous in getting it reapproved, and there are costs making sure that you stay above that, you don't get into that situation. Now, I'm going to just say a little aside. I've worked really hard the last 10 years to make sure all our estimating systems stay approved and stay above water. And I love that we did this, but we bought Sikorsky with a disapproved estimate system. I'm kind of like, everybody else, hey, that's a great thing. It's like, what? You bought a company with a disapproved estimate? What are you doing to me? Trying to retire me? But we'll talk about working through that a little bit too. And then just the conclusions. And I will take questions, so just let me know. So, defining the problem, and the game changer for us is absolutely, when the business system rules came in and the threats of penalties and disapprovals, that changed the whole focus. So I'll just give you an example. It used to be if you got a draft level 3 car, I don't know if DCMA is in here or DCA is in here, but if you got something like that, it's okay, you worked it locally. Now, if there's a draft level 3 car come out, our CFO knows about it, and it's what are you doing about it? And so another example, we had a disapproved EV system, and I can't tell you how much, the resources and the people and the support, and boy, you get help from every place, whether you want it or not. So it's definitely a game changer. And the penalties aren't, they're not small. I mean, when you have some large contracts, 2-5% or whatever it is, it definitely catches people's eyes, especially with that cash being tied up. So kind of how this started, and the alligators in the water, and maybe that's not a politically correct term right now, especially with some of the things that happened with alligators, and people lately. But it is for us, because there are a lot of things going on with that. So in early 2012, DCAA came to us. We had some corporate management council meetings, and Ken Sikosha, who was Anita Bales' number 2, he was the Atlantic region head at that time, came and said, hey, George, we have some issues here with your proposals, and started citing some of the things. And we said, hey, Ken, okay, let us get back to you. So we went off and did our own independent assessments of those, and came back and said, you're right, we do have some of these issues, and some of these issues that you brought up, and then there were some other issues that maybe you didn't bring up as we were doing the assessments on it. So definitely gave us a rise of concern about our business systems and what do we need to do to put in place to go off and fix this. So, those were some of the game changers there. Then some of the impediments to submitting adequate proposals. It's like when you go across these business areas, and, there are different products, space out, builds, onesie, twosie satellites. They'll build some missiles. You got, our Aero, which builds the F-35, C-130s, they, different products. You got Missiles Fire Control that build, a lot of high quantity Hellfires, things like that. So everybody's different and how they approach things is different, but there was no really consistent approach on how you do things and based on customers and whatnot. So different processes in the business areas. And then, so when you go and say we need to solve this problem, there's no real consensus on how you're going to move forward on this. And I think, and we'll talk about now the way that DCA is structured and others, that you need to have that consistency. And then the other thing we had was, at the time, was there wasn't consistency within DCA. So one office would say, hey, we got an issue over here, but they weren't always talking to the other offices. So, and then, you say, well, that's not an issue. So some things, sometimes you would, it would be brought up on one area, but it wasn't brought up in the other. So there wasn't a consistent approach. There wasn't a consistent agreement. And one of the things that's really happened and that's helpful is, with Ken Sakosha, was really pulling people together and say, okay, let's be consistent. If this is a violation or if this is a problem, let's make sure that we have the same interpretation, which helps us as we spread the message, because I can't tell one business area you need to do it and the others are saying, well, I don't have to do it because that's not an issue here. So the consistency in the approach is both from our standpoint and DCA's has really improved and grown over the last, I'd say, 6 years. And Kari, you'll stop me if I'm getting off track here. So what we did is we engaged in two-way communication with DCA and DCMA. We pulled our teams together and said, okay, let's really work, to get to root cause and come up with a solution that we can all live with, both internal and external. Like I said, multiple services, customers, timelines, due dates, you got to meet that, and you want to be 100% compliant. Miss anything on that, Kari? So, tackling the tough issues. So, we identified our top 3 issues. We looked, we went off, we looked at the DCA estimating deficiency reports. We looked at what were our unsupported costs in the audits, and then the conversations with DCA and DCMA headquarters. And so, really what we came, the business areas, as we pulled them together, they were open to developing a corporate solution that, kind of not really the one size fits all, but how do we approach this collectively and solve this issue? Because most of the business areas were having the same areas, commercial item determination, LTAs, supplier proposal adequacy, and then also how do we effectively deal with our competitors? And sometimes it's, your competitors, sometimes your teammates, and there's the issue of dealing with proprietary data and not being able to get that data and not being able to move quickly enough sometimes for, as DCMA pointed out to me earlier today, to get them the information that they need, or why do we kick them out, just go do an assist audit and not do more things with that. So that was being able to look at that. And so, we went off to try to create a win-win solution. Working with DCMA, working with DCA, we had, they were in all the meetings, so we had a series of meetings. We had some in Fort Worth. We had some were, meetings on the phone. I can't remember what others, but Fort Worth, Dallas, out at Missiles and Fire Control. I had several meetings with DCA, one-on-one meetings as we kind of worked down how we were going to solve the problem. We had business areas support from all our business areas were included in this because this was a problem collectively we had to solve. It was consistent problems that were popping up in all of our business areas. And then we had the consensus for the approach, for the corporate approach. And then we had to make sure that as we work towards a solution, we update our policies and our process, our command media to make sure that that the solutions got in there. So. And then the other issues that we had too is as you're working through this, sometimes you have to be concerned about, am I disclosing too much? Am I putting myself out there about some of the issues that we have? You want to improve, but you worry about, am I opening up too much here where I'm going to get findings because you've acknowledged that you have some of these areas. So it kind of takes it a little bit out of the gray area. So that's something you really have to be careful with. How much, you want, it's full disclosure, you want to be transparent, you want to be honest, but you may not always want to bear everything, right? So I don't know how else to say that politically correctly, but that's just, the way it is. So, issue resolution. So one of the things after we identified, what the issues were and what some of the solutions, we realized that, hey, we can't do this by ourselves. We can't just do this with estimating and pricing. It has to be more than us, and we'll talk about it, but we had to really partner with our supply chain in order to move forward. We had to supply chain contracts, the different organizations engaged, and then working with DCA and DCMA to make sure as we put forth our solutions, that they're going to buy off on those. That yes, you guys, Lockheed, you went far enough on that, or no, you didn't go far enough. We wanted to partner with them, and this is kind of the consistency, the transparency that we want to have with the government. We want it to be more of an open book test rather than, you go behind the scenes, you come up with a solution, you throw them out, and then all of a sudden you find out you're being written up for that. You want to make sure that it's something that everybody would embrace. So, and then after you do that, one of the really big issues that we had was, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but, we put it in place, and then DCA is like, well, okay, we're still seeing this, but, you've got proposals that have been out there for months or years. Some of those things haven't gotten in. So, we had to really push DCA that give us time to implement these changes. You brought them to us. We've leaned forward. We're making these changes. Let us get them in. You realize with 100,000 employees and $50 billion in sales, you're not going to just turn everything on a dime and it's going to be perfect. It's going to take a while, to get all that in, to get everybody trained. And just like with the business systems rule, they're not always doing system audits, but it could be one rogue proposal that comes in, but somebody didn't get the message up in, someplace that remotely, and that's all it could take to take your estimating system down. So we're saying, let us make these changes. Let us implement it. Let us keep drilling it down. It takes a while. And it's a team sport. It was the message here. Kari? I always look to Kari to make sure that I, don't miss anything. Kari's been my corporate estimating chair for the last 6 years. It's usually 1 year rotating, but when you talk about alligators in the water, Kari came with 11 years of DCA experience to us, and so she has such a breadth of experience, and is so crucial, important, not only myself but our corporate leaders are saying you need to keep Kari in that role, making sure that we're doing the right thing, making sure we're turning out compliant proposals. She's probably the most knowledgeable person on estimating at Lockheed Martin, and I could not do my job or function without her. So I think I work for her more than she works for me. So like we talked about, the top three issues, we needed supply chain because over 50% of our content is subcontract material costs, and all the issues tied back to that. And so we've been partnering with them, and that's been. I was a little bit surprised because in the past it was difficult to kind of wrap your arms around supply chain, and they're kind of an independent. They don't report with us up through the finance chain, so there wasn't really connections back. But they've been just awesome as far as being part of the team and being up and forward and taking a leadership role. And we've been integrated with them for 5 years, 6 years now. And I'll tell you, if you need to solve your problems, I think it's crucial that supply chain takes an active and a leadership role because their reach is great. So, like we talked, and then so we had supply management support through all the business areas. I don't know if I want to say anything more about that slide. And our reach is beyond them too. So it's throughout the organization, wherever you need it, And I think if you want to do compliant proposals, you have to reach a wider audience. So I want to talk a little bit about the changing workforce too. And then just, we've talked about the partnering and then, understanding the difference between, the people that you have to reach. So you've got the estimators out there that could be the, you know, the BOE writers, the guys that do it maybe once every 5 years, or sometimes they, you know, that's all they do is they write BOEs. But you have to, and they're the true estimators, right? They're the ones that are estimating what it's going to take and developing the good BOEs. So you have to be able to reach them, to be able to train them. And then you have the pricing proposal analysts, which are the pricers, you know, that do this. This is their full-time job. So, you know, you have to be able to not only work with the pricing analyst to say, here's how the changes are, here's what's coming down at you, here's what you need to do to make sure that you're compliant. And then you have to be able to get back to the estimators and be able to train them so that the proposal analyst, pricing proposal analyst can then look at their inputs and say, hey, this is good or this is not good, here's what you need to do. So you have to train your entire workforce, and you have to be able to reach your entire workforce to make sure that, you know, that you're doing both. You can't just say, hey, here's one or the other. And the one thing that's always kind of surprised me when I took this role, coming out of the modeling estimating role, you do the estimates, but the pricers don't typically do that. DCMA was asking me about buyers. Well, do the buyers know how all this stuff plays together and goes together, rolls up into the next assembly? And in a lot of cases, they don't, because they're so focused on what they're buying and what they're doing. And a lot of the pricers don't know, you know, they're really smart people, and they're making sure that you're compliant with FAR and DFARs and doing all the things that you need to do. But they're not the ones that are looking at, you know, how the estimate ties in and what are the comparisons out there. You know, they're not, you know, there's a difference between them. I had this conversation with Dave Burgess when he went over to Northrop Grumman, that they are separate. You know, they're not looking at the entire proposal, the entire quote, and know how everything plays. Everybody has their piece of it, and the pricing is more on the compliance and the rates and the factors and all that other stuff. So it's definitely, you know, a wider audience that you have to reach. And so, you know, one of the things that we've really tried to do as we've implemented these changes and done things, and we'll talk about it, but when we spent probably a year or more with DCA and DCMA, making sure we're on the right page, put everything out, sent it back, and then we got a clean audit opinion, so we knew we were good to go, made all of our changes. And then how do you reach everybody to get there? And like I said, DCA kind of pushed back, like, hey, how come you're not done? Well, I'm going to start writing you up. You know, it's like, give us time. So some of the ways that we use to train our people is, you know, webcasts. You know, we have webcasts that we reach anywhere from, you know, 500 to 1,000 people to make sure that we get the message. You know, we train the trainers. You know, we make sure that the leads know exactly what we're doing. You know, we have online courses, online training. That's one of the things we really hang our hats on, is that we have lots of training, internal training for our folks, making sure that they get the message, making sure that they do compliant proposal, make sure that they know the latest policy of what we're trying to get to. Online publications. So, and that's really the tough part, because sometimes you think you've got all the training and nobody's read it, and it's still coming back. And so how do you keep drilling it down? And my bosses are always on me about that. It's like, how do you know it's reaching the right audience? How do you know they're really doing this? How do you know they're following it? And then you get pushback too. It's like, well, I've always done it this way. I mean, how many's heard that? I've always done it this way. Why do I want to change? My customer wants me to do this way. My customer, what's not compliant? You know, you're in violation of the FAR and DFARs, but my customer likes it. Or you get, we've been building this product for 40 years. It's on contract. You know, it's being used. Why do I have to do that? It's like, trust me, you have to do that. You have to have that discipline. So, trying to inspire people to change, that's a difficult product. So, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the tools and parametric models. I talked a little bit, but, you know, one of the things in which has been really nice about ProPricer, you know, we have a very complex accounting systems, and, you know, in the past, like I talked about, everybody wanted to do their own thing on pricing tools, or we had lots of things where people were using Excel, you know, which wasn't repeatable, and you'd find errors and problems in it. So being able to have really top-notch pricing tools, which ProPricer has just been an excellent tool for us. And for me, it's been an affordability initiative that I, you know, was able to get a lot of leverage off for a few years. Now that it's in place, you know, I don't get to use that as much. But, you know, we don't have to maintain these tools. We don't have to have these suite of programmers online 24/7. ProPricer has them now, you know, where they have to go make changes or do things. You know, you have this nice seamless tool that works. You know, you got your rate application and algorithms, the tables, all that's in there. We have like Les and Charles for us that are maintaining that and taking care of that, which has really been great for us, and to be able to not have to have a bunch of tools. Because when I came in, there was a huge footprint, and we're spending so much money, not only developing the tools, but also on the whole folks up 24/7, maintaining, doing that, and we were able to really neck our footprint down, which has been really valuable to us. And so now that it's no longer a bother for people, you don't hear anything about it. And so, you kind of take some of these tools and people for granted. So, but like I said, we're advocates for it. Our sub-tier suppliers use it. It rolls up into our pricing. It's been really effective. We advocate the government to use it because they'll ask for, hey, can you give us a copy of what you did here, because they're starting to use ProPricer. So it's been very helpful as far as transparency and be able to understand the estimate and see what's going on into it. So that's been good. And the other thing we talked about Price H, and it's been very good as far as an analytical tool. And we're trying to use it more, and we have used it recently for proposals where we've actually done the proposals using price, calibrated to our past history and our actuals, and it's been really successful. And one of the things, I know this is a little bit off for this topic, but I've been talking for years to the government with this, that you do so much with your capes and cakes, collecting all this data. You have all this CER data similar to on the modeling side. Isn't that a way to use that to get the proposals to go faster? These data-driven proposals. And the capes and cakes were not part of the source selection, so we're trying to drive them closer between, analytics and contracts. Help close the gap, help get us on contract faster. You want to have effort into that tool, use the capes and cakes. And on a couple of our classified customers, they actually did that, where we actually pushed them saying, you need to be part of the source selection. You've collected this data for 30 years. You have all this data. Because just to step back, a lot of the evaluators say, well, I can't evaluate that CER. I don't know what to do with it. But they have these organizations that know exactly what to do with it, and they know where it is. And so it's been used several times recently. It's been successful. It didn't mean that we win it. Some of the others have won. We've won some. They've won some. But I think it's another tool in the tool suite, and I think it's something that we'd like to see more of. And I'm sure others would too. Did I miss anything there, Kari? No. I'm just so used to Kari in my ear saying, hey, you forgot this, or you didn't do that. So the other thing is keeping up with the changing environment. So one of the things that we've done, and that's been a really effective tool for us, and I don't know how many others, but we have a corporate estimating council. And so when I took over this corporate estimating council, they thought it was a social network. They didn't think that do work and go off and develop stuff or solve the corporation's problems. No, we're just going to meet a few times a year, and I kind of changed that, and I definitely met some resistance. So they used to, lots of donuts and coffee and stuff like that. We threw out the donuts and brought in more coffee, and it's really it's a model for how corporations should have councils. It's a working council. If something big comes up or there's an issue within estimating, we get the collective minds. There are 25 subject matter experts, the best of the best in our corporation, and they go off and solve problems. I'll give you an example. We had some things about our proposal timeliness. Well, what are you doing about it? So Marilyn Hewson, Bruce Tanner get hit with these questions. We don't have those metrics. We don't have how long these things are taking in these certain areas. The Corporate Estimating Council went off and started collecting those metrics. It wasn't actually in their swim lane, but it was something that was needed. They go off and do it. There's policy changes that come down from DC. We got folks like Kim Lineberger and Cassie Roberts in the front reading those memos that come out of DCA, and what does this mean to us? What do we need to flow out to the business? So they're staying on top of that. Our IT folks, Les and Charles, anything that happens there, they make sure they stay in front of what's the most current tools and what are we doing about it? What APIs do we need? What are those issues? So, and we don't pay for them. I mean, they're kind of donating a lot of their time to do this stuff. So they're tackling all these things. They're coming up with key metrics, health metrics, different things like that, sharing lessons learned, best practice. They're networking off of each other. I think it's really valuable. Hey, I got a problem here. What am I going to do? And I think one of these forums, to be able to meet people like that and say, hey, what are you doing about this? Even though, you may be working for Raytheon or Orbital or Boeing, to be able to kind of exchange ideas, instead of just thinking in your your own swim lane, it kind of expands. I think it makes all of us better. So I can't say enough about the corporate council, the work that they do, the lessons learned, and it is viewed, maybe I'm bragging about it, but it's the people, most of them are sitting at this table, it's the people that their work that's being done is being viewed as a model throughout our corporation, and they go back and say, we want to form a council, go look and see what they're doing, what the corporate estimating council, that's the way you should be acting, that's the stuff that you should be doing. And the other thing what we're doing is, I think is important when we talk about alligators in the water, is we meet face-to-face with DCMA and DCA 3 times a year, where they'll come in and we'll have these sit-downs about what's going on, what problems you have, and what issues. So before they bubble up and become issues, we can resolve them, we can have those conversations. I always think communication is the best thing, is let's find out what you're thinking. Does this work? Does that not work? What are you seeing? I want to get ahead of it. Our goal, and everybody else's goal, is probably to do good products. We want our proposals to be 100% compliant. We're not ever going to get there, but we want them to be, and we want to strive to that. We don't want to be the rogue contractor that just doesn't care. We really want to do a good job. We're not, like I said, we're not always going to get there, and we're going to have mistakes. We're going to have human error, but that's our goal. Did I miss anything, Kari? And that just, talk about business system rule and the cost. Estimating is a fairly immature system from the business system. You have the 17 broad DFARS criteria, that you're evaluated against. So what we've put in, one of the things we've done as we've had issues with the compliance, we make sure that we have the compliance checklist, we have the reviews. And one of the things that we've done is now every business area, and it didn't used to be this, every business area has a compliance team. There's 5 to 7 people out at Arrow, there's 5 to 7 people out at Sikorsky where we're disapproved, checking the proposals. It's no longer, the line of business did it themselves. We're having people come in, and we're having people stop that proposal. That's not popular. Trust me, when you've got a program manager screaming at you, and they're not using the kindest words, but we're not allowing proposals that aren't compliant to go out the door anymore. The penalties are just too great. And the other thing, too, is like when you have a disapproved estimating system like we've seen, everything gets called into question. Is the government getting a good deal? Hey, do you know they have a disapproved estimating system over here? It really bogs everything down, and then you're scrutinized at every level. So it's really imperative that you really do check that you make sure and that your customer has the confidence that you're doing the right thing. And so putting those compliance teams in place, putting those checks. I use the Corporate Estimating Council also 2 times a year, go off and audit other proposals, pull them, look at them, make sure they're compliant. And the people say, well, why not? I'm doing the right thing. And we'll have huge arguments about that because you get a different set of eyes to look at that and come in and tell you, you're full of it. You're not doing the right thing. This is wrong. Well, we don't want to do it. We force them to make those changes because it's going to come back. And especially, the other thing too, the way DCA is, organized now, where they do all of Lockheed, and you got John Shire, who's the head of that for us. So they're talking to each other. So you may have a problem in one business area. It's going to flow to the other. So if you can get ahead of it, you catch it here, you make the changes that ripple back down, you're going to save yourself time, money, and so it's an additional cost to us, but I think it's something that we need to do, and then having that independent set of eyes, because even some people that are really the experts, when they're being evaluated, they'll fight you on things. And I had that with Kari a few years ago. It's like, no, I don't need that help. The person that's helped the most, we're good, but getting that other set of eyes will help you kind of identify and say, oh, maybe I did miss something. And I think overall it's a positive. The withholds, longer negotiation span times, and we've seen that with Sikorsky with the disapproved estimating system. It definitely is much more scrutiny. The times are longer, and it just kind of goes with the territory. But we're getting on top of that. So just the conclusions. I don't know if I've touched everything that people wanted to hear. The things that you have to be cautious with alligators in the water. Like I said, it could be one proposal that alligator gets you and takes down your entire system. But You've got timelines and due dates. So people are under pressure. The pricers, they are absolutely under pressure to meet deadlines, and you've got changing RFP requirements. They don't always go back and get new delivery dates. A lot of times they're being held. So it's a tough job, and when we talk about pricers and people out on proposals working 100 hours a week, week in and week out, and if you're good at what you do, which a lot of you people in this room are good, you keep getting thrown right back there. It's not like you're going to go home and get to see your kids, or, people probably haven't seen their backyard in 6 months, right, because they're, working sun up to sundown. So, there's a lot of pressure. Disclosure of proposal issues and additional audit findings that you have to be working through. Always coming up. Escapes and errors. I mean, those things are going to happen. You're never going to be pure. You're never going to, you're going to strive to be 100%, but you're never going to get there. And the other thing, it does take time. You got to fight to make sure that you get the time to implement those changes. If you want to self-disclose, hey, we've got this, or you're working toward that, but you need the time to make sure. And the hard part is drilling it down to make sure that everybody gets that message and does the right thing. Even with policy changes, command media, that stuff still is hard to do. And I've been there where I've had that criticism. It's like, well, yeah, you did this, but you're not doing your job because we still have this error out here. So how do we reach those folks? How do we make sure our products are compliant? And it is a tough job. It's even tougher sometimes when somebody fights against it, even though they're wrong, and just raises maybe the ire of the auditors up, you don't get much gray area there. So once again, it's like, two-way communication with your, and I think communication is important. One of the things we've talked to about with DCA, DCMA, don't write us up, don't cite us, pick up the phone and call us. If we forgot something, a signature block is missing, that's not a significant deficiency. Just tell us. Tell us what it is. Let's work together on getting this. I think we've had a good relationship with DCA. I think we've had a great relationship with DCMA, trying to work that. So that's kind of all that I had for now. Thanks for your time. I'll take questions collectively. I'll try to answer them with my team here. Or if there's no questions,
let's give George a man.
Thank you. Thank you.
A lot of great information.
I'm done.
You done?
Am I done?
Oh, are you done? You're
I'm
not
done.
done?
I'll take questions. If
I got lots of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm sweating.
Is that okay?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I'll do my best to answer your questions.
And I tell you, George, these are, as I look through some of these are some really good questions. Man, I stayed up all night writing these. No.
I'm going to take my compliance person up here to help me. Make sure I don't make an error.
And I think some tough ones. And you had some really good information up there on your.
If they're from
charts.
DCMA, just like they've been just like haunting me.
Oh yeah. And so we'll have DCMA that will speak a little bit this afternoon, as well as DCAA. But it'll be good just to get your insight on
Okay.
some of this. So let us begin. How do you inspire all stakeholders in the proposal process to adopt change? Your estimators, you talk about your pricing analysts, your leadership. So how do you inspire the stakeholders in the proposal process?
Well, that has really been our big task, and that's something that I think we've been pretty successful with, to reach out and make sure that they're aware, like when we talk about supply chain, that they have to be part of the process for the solution, right? That they, when we first started doing this, they're going to take our estimating system down, but it's like, for them it would be like, okay, well, procurement system's okay or whatever, but when you make them aware of what's going to happen to your proposals, how difficult it's going to be, what when you look, if you're disapproved or this has been, they don't accept, there's a negative to them. So being able to reach out, not only at so we were able to reach out at the top of our supply chain. So the VPs of our supply chain and head of that, we made sure that they were aware of what the consequences were. And then what was great is you get some of the folks that were advocates and leaders to be able to step in and say, we recognize that and we acknowledge that and we want to work that issue. And they've been part of our corporate estimating. We have our own supply chain headed by the leaders, directors and VPs that are part of that and then report back. So you have to really be able to reach out to them, make sure they're aware of what's going on and aware of how much you need them to help make that fix. And they've taken leadership roles in that. So you just really have to be able to reach out and make sure that they're aware of what the consequences, and then to have your management support to realize that you need them. So all the way up to like our CFO level to realize that, hey, you need to be working with them and continue that. I think that's part of the Inspire and the training. So then you also give them the ownership. So a lot of these webcasts, their leaderships are on these, like supply chain. I'll use supply. They're part of that. They're working with us. So Kim, Kari did.
So along that line, the concept of price to win. Please discuss how price to win analyses fits within your estimating processes and proposal prep.
Okay. So price to win doesn't fit within my philosophy. So price to win is like a business development activity, kind of the analytics up front of what it's going to take to get, and it's one of the things that you obviously struggle with, right? I mean, we don't own it, but it does have an effect on estimating. I don't know how much I want to get into that. Do you know?
I mean, we see it on competitive captures.
Right.
And it's really, working with those independent estimators to make sure that they're building the technically acceptable solution and not the gold-plated Cadillac.
So I will say this. So price to win is...
Just repeat a little bit of what you said so everybody could hear. Or I can come to you. That might help.
But I have something else to add to that too. Go ahead.
Okay. So for us, I think we see price to win more in
Can I
a
take this off?
environment.
Yeah.
And
True.
it's really working with our estimators to make sure that they understand what the technically acceptable solution is, what we have to design, and not design that gold-plated solution, right? That gold-plated Cadillac. So that make sure that we have the have-to-haves and not the want-to-haves in our solution to get to that place.
So like Kari says, it's mostly in the competitive environment, and it's also making sure that from an estimating that's something that you can actually do, because the price to win isn't always something that's readily apparent. You have to make sure that technical solution works with that and that you can actually do it. So the estimators, as much as they can, push back on what that is, and that sometimes pulls in the modeling organization that does the trades. So price to win does one thing, and sometimes using the price tools and that, can we actually get to that? What do we have to do? What are the step downs to get either to that price to win, and how do we get down to that level realistically? And then for us on the price to win, we do an EPP process that goes up through corporate. And so we have an ICE team that does also an independent assessment to make sure that that's a doable process, and that there's a confidence level that we can actually achieve that level. And if we're not, then that proposal will be plussed up. If the ICE folks, Jeff Aletto heads our ICE group, and Dale Johnson, they come back and say, that's not, and the corporation won't take that exposure and say, we're going to get there. So if you develop that technical solution to get there and we price it, we'll do it. But if you don't get to that level, you're not going to go forward with that. I mean, I don't think Lockheed wants to win bad business, right? They don't want to, get on the door and then, not be able to perform or execute.
Okay.
And Shay would drill us for that too, right? I mean,
right.
Either too profitable or, yeah.
And I don't know who asked that question, but is it okay if maybe, what's your name? Kari? Okay, at break, and whoever asked that question, maybe you all could sync up and
sure.
And they'll buy you a cup of coffee or something. That'll be good. Be great. Thank you. So, George, your bio suggests that Lockheed has a very sophisticated estimating system. So do you rely on functional departments to develop those estimates, or do you have a team of career professional estimators? You identified some different players.
We definitely have. I mean, we have, each business area has their own estimating system description. Each business area has their own group of estimators, their compliance teams. Some of them are embedded in central organization. Some of them are dispersed through. Some LOBs have their own teams. So it varies kind of across the business area. And I'll ask our experts, do you disagree? Or, I think it's very similar to, what all the majors have, right? With Boeing, Northrop Grumman, we've had those conversations. But it's not just one dedicated team of like we've talked about. It's not just one dedicated. I sometimes think that might not be a bad thing to have a dedicated team, but it's kind of dispersed throughout the business areas and throughout the lines of businesses. But we do have central teams, that have some estimators in there, that some compliance folks, that you can use as resources as you need them, and and one of the things of having some common tools like we have is being able to transfer people between business areas as things are needed. So, people understand if they're using a ProPricer that, hey, it's not some new pricing tool. I can pull somebody out of space and put them over Arrow to help with that because, hey, they're up to speed on the tool, starting on day one. So it makes people portable. I got off the topic. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Here's a question on how you train the workforce within Lockheed Martin, particularly with your estimators, price analysts. So there's a question, and then I have a follow-up question that comes from someone else. But the FAR requires that those involved in proposal activities are trained. Okay, how do you ensure that all your estimators are trained, since this is a moving target? And just along that line, this is kind of another question. So, how do you train and ensure that your folks are knowledgeable within the corporate workforce? You mentioned FAR, DFARs, and having knowledge and expertise and the competencies associated with that. So the federal government actually has a structured approach for training their workforce. How would you respond to that from a corporate perspective?
So one of the things that we've developed from a corporate sample, we've developed the training. We've developed the FAR, DFARS checklist training. We've developed lots of training on pricing things, pricing tools, pricing applications. So what we have is we have a real robust suite of our own internal training that when somebody new comes in, we have them take that training, we go through the training, and then the other thing we do is we have a lot of the on-the-job training. So the people like up in the front row, like the Kims and the Karis, they'll be training people as they come in as far as here's the things that you need to be doing. They're training the trainers to make sure that they get that. We try to pair them with senior people so that they get the training. And then the other thing we have is our policy and pricing group within the Corporate Estimating Council, so that anything changes within the government, a FAR change or whatever it is, an interpretation change. CID has changed. How do we make sure that what's changed on CID, we're getting the right data into our proposal? So we not only do we do that, but we make sure that we put out Twitter accounts, and we put out training, and we reach out to folks, and we're saying if this is a hot topic and we need to focus on it, that's what becomes a multicast. So we bring in the experts to make sure we reach the people, and then whether it's staff meetings, but it's also it's really trying to drive that training down to the lower levels, and trying to make sure that the message gets heard and that we stay on top of it. And part of what the policy and process group does, right, is to make sure that that message is heard and that our folks are trained. Do you guys have anything? And then it's our training is in the My Learning, so they get credit for it when they take it as part of our Grand Media.
So you all have mandatory training. Can I ask then, so how important is it the government has a set of competencies, right, that they train to. How important is it for corporate to also be aligned to similar competencies so that we're kind of singing off of the same sheet of music? I mean, we can have different voices, but it's good to kind of be in sync. I mean, I'm a tenor, by the way.
It's
so
very, very, very important to us. Very
yeah.
important.
So is your training kind of aligned to that?
Yes.
Okay.
What we'll take is we'll take some of that, the government stuff that they're doing,
Okay.
and interpret it and put it in ours so that we make sure that our products come back and they're seamless when they see them. It doesn't always work that way, but I mean that's our goal.
Okay. So this is the follow-up question that came up with the training. So with respect to training of estimators and proposal pricing analysts, is it possible to share your training packages with other folks? So you could answer that or not. Buy more coffee. It's always nice to leverage best practices across the industries.
But I will say this is one of the things that we've done is, and I didn't mention, I wanted to mention is, but like when we, with supply chain being such a big part of it, we have developed training for supply chain for the vendors that they've taken out and given to their sub-tier suppliers to have. So when we had all those problems, we developed training for external uses, make sure that they were doing compliance, make sure they were hitting all the DFAR stuff. We've embedded people in with some of those troublesome suppliers. When you identify they've had problems doing proposals, we send people out there to live with them and do that. So we do some of that external, but a lot of it's been developed internally, and we kind of like to keep it that way. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, very good. And I might just say, so I think forums like this and other forums like the National Contract Management Association and some other associations, when they have forums and events like this, at least in my mind, it gives us an opportunity really to come together so we can have that cross flow of ideas. And that could just be could be a little off, but it seems like this creates a good environment for us.
I think this is one of the best forums going. I really do.
Right.
I don't think pricing, gets their due.
That's right.
As these forums, to have something like this, to be able, like I said, be able to see, the high-level government folks that are making these decisions and see this and be able to interchange. This is a great forum, and you got. The companies sponsoring aren't huge companies, but I mean, this is outstanding. We were talking about this last night. To be able to bring this quality together is just kind of
right.
That's amazing. Maybe it's because it's such a great, yourself, just attracts all these stars.
Oh yeah. I'm from Alabama. We bring them all. Yeah, yeah. That's just the way we roll. And I don't want to call. I do. Janice Muskoff and I were talking earlier, and she's so looking forward to talking with you all about this sole source tool. And we were talking about, the predominance of what we have here is industry, but yet there is a need for us to bring more government into the conversation, and it gives us a great opportunity, I think, to do that. And I have not seen the tool, but I'm looking forward to it. But I'm looking even more forward to it. Sharing it with industry counterparts and having the conversation with government. So I think you guys are on the right track. And I don't know if you answered that question that you're going to share it with the other folks. But George, we can talk about that offline as we.
I tell you what I will do. I will share it with some of you top pricers that want to come over to Lockheed. You come over. We'll give you all the training that you want.
Yeah. Okay. Good answer. Man, I like that.
We need good people. I mean, it kind of takes care of my deficiencies, right?
So here's a very interesting question. Talking about the TINA threshold and the updated TINA threshold, right? And some of the conversation was had yesterday. But, George, was the TINA threshold increase more of a Bruno Mars, that's what I like? Or a Beyonce lemonade, make the best of it. So in your mind, what
you're asking, kind of an old guy that, I'm not Bruno Mars, Beyonce, maybe.
Is it a good thing?
It's a good thing.
Good thing.
It's a good thing. I think that we haven't seen, I know Shay was talking about, it's really not that much, but I think we've been advocating strongly to raise the threshold for a long time. So that's definitely a positive, because I think one of the things with so much certified cost and pricing data and so much detail, it's kind of choking some of the smaller suppliers. So if it does give some relief there, that's great. If it had gone up to $5 million, we would have been happy with that too. But I think that's definitely a positive step. And with inflation over the time, 750 was nothing. And then when you think about some of these multi-year procurements and things like that that get combined with suppliers, so it's even better. So like I said, we've been advocating, and I don't think you've seen the full effects because, it starts, July 1st, and then, it doesn't really take effect on existing contracts. So if you don't change contract numbers, you're still stuck with it. But I think over time, I think is a positive.
Okay, very good, very good. Shay spoke yesterday about initiatives to reduce streamlining the proposal and negotiation timeline. What are your thoughts on that, and how realistic is that?
No, I mean, that leads me in. I could spend the next hour talking about that, because one of the things that we've been doing is we've been looking at the metrics, and we've been pushing back on some of the things, because when you look at the amount of time that the contractor takes on it versus the amount of time the government takes, it's dwarfed, right? I mean, we're turning our proposals in a certain amount of time, and then it's 2 to 3 times the amount of time once the government gets it to actually get back and get to contract to work. So that's been an issue of contention for Lockheed Martin, is like we're turning in, 90-something% of our proposals on time, but the time it takes to go through all the other things and the negotiations and empowering people and to actually get the contract award is taking so long. We just want to get on contract and get moving faster. Now, there have been some of those things where we're trying to truncate that time, but I think when you look at reducing that time and then some of the requirements of being able to go out and take your RFP and kind of disseminate it and then go back out to your suppliers and get data back in and being able to get their stuff and turn it in, you don't have a lot of time. And I don't know if cutting down to 60 days is something that's you're going to be able to do. I know we've done some pilots where it's been successful. I don't know. I just think that we're always trying to streamline it, but I'm just not sure that some of the methods we're taking are really going to get us there. But we're definitely all in on that. We're part of Shay's group. We did it on we've done some of the pilots for him, and we're going to continue to work that. But we'd also like to see, don't just beat us up, the contractors up. Let's beat up the other end, of how long it sits in there, right?
Okay, that's fair. Internally, when you found issues with your estimating system, would you disclose them immediately to DCMA, DCAA, or did you remediate them first and then disclose?
Well, we're always trying to look ahead. I mean, this is why we keep health metrics, to be able to make sure that we know we've got an issue coming up, whether it's an issue that should rise to the level of DCA. We're always trying to do the internal look and fix things as we go along and make sure we take it. But we disclose. If something comes up in a proposal, we disclose. We're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying, because we know what's going to happen, right, when you do that. I mean, the penalties and the trust is gone. So we're always trying to stay ahead of that. I don't know if Kari or Kim, our compliance folks, but it's always disclosure as always. I mean, our CFO isn't. He's in. Here's that. We're in this for the long run, right? You can see, hey, we can get by for 6 months, but our CFO isn't in for that. He's in it for the long run and to build that trust. And I think some of the DCA and DCMA folks that know him, they know that's his philosophy. What's that? I can't.
You hold?
Yeah. Well, that's what we're doing now. We now hold. Yeah, we stop them. We get these poor people up here lay in front of railroad tracks. So those aren't stripes on them, on their clothes. That's a train that ran over.
So let's stay along that. Let's stay with the conversation of building that relationship with DCMA, DCAA, and again, they'll be here this afternoon, so we can have even a more robust conversation in terms of forging those relationships. But interesting question. So marriage can be a great thing, and I wasn't sure where this was going. What would be the top 2 thoughts to creating the right marriage relationship with key counterparts at DCMA and DCAA? Sounds like you all have a good relationship and rapport with those folks. What would you tell the audience in terms of how can we enhance the relationships?
Well, I think the two-way communication is crucial. I think it's being able to reach out and try to have that relationship. I've tried to do that in everything I've done in my careers, whether it's buying commands, whether it's the CAPES, KEGS, whether it's DCMA or DCAA, to be able to have that relationship, to be able to understand what it is that they want. So from my standpoint, if John Shire tells me, hey, George, I really want more focus on the CAPAs, because of this, this, and this, and I can go back to the business area and say, hey, after having that conversation and give and take, here's what we need to do to make us that much more effective. I think it's that communication rather than, getting written up or getting disapproved or having findings or, cars written on, your estimating system. Being able to have those conversations, be able to establish those relationships. And I think DCA and DCMA want to have those relationships, and they want to have those. They want to come to our meetings and have those discussions, and they want to kind of get out in front of them. So, I don't think it benefits them to disapprove, but I think they want to make sure that they want to make sure that their shareholders, the U.S. government, the buying commands are also being looked at and doing the right thing. So, when you realize that they have a job to do and it's an important job and we have a job to do too. So I think it's a benefit for everybody to work together. So one is the communication, and then I think sometimes the other part is, when you have that communication, sometimes you have to push back because some of the things you're not going to agree with, that they're not maybe the smart business practices. So I think it's to be able to have that give and take and push back on certain items to come up with a solution that everybody can live with. I think that's important. But I think then the other part is when you have that, the second part is if you're going to have that relationship and you're going to have that communication with them, then you can't ignore what came out of that.
That's right.
Go in and, you've opened up that stuff, you have this communication, and then you're not doing it. Be prepared for findings because that's what's going to happen. Okay. That we told you and we gave you that feedback and you decided to go this way. Don't be surprised if you don't go that way, that it doesn't go your way. So
yeah, how do you respond to whatever those issues or challenges are? From your perspective, how accurate are the best estimates in the world? Reason I ask, yesterday the government talked about variances of plus or minus 3%, and it caused a little concern.
I mean, an estimate by nature isn't accurate, right? I mean, it's an estimate. So when I hear 3 to 4%, I think, hey, that's great. If you can get that close. But RFP requirements change. Things are different. A lot of stuff's in fluctuation. You don't know, some of the materials you're buying, 2 to 3 years from now, you don't know what's going to happen in those things. You don't know if suppliers are going to still be in business. So I think there are fluctuations that are going to happen. It's kind of the old, guy used to say an analogy, measure it with a micrometer, mark it with chalk, and cut it with an axe, right? So you just, and once again, 3 to 4%. I mean, when we look at how much growth we have on stuff, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. We talked about LPTA yesterday, lowest price technically acceptable.
Yeah.
And I applaud you. George heard early this morning that any use of the acronym was going to cost him $5 if he didn't explain that. I didn't hear any acronyms, George. That's pretty good. So Charlie, as we move forward, if we use an acronym and we don't explain it, it's $5 to the person. So that's fair and reasonable. I think everybody would agree to. I have experienced agencies that still use a lot of LPTAs, right? So how do you build your RP so that you can win if LPTA is a major factor?
I'm not sure I quite understand. How do we build our?
How do you price it to win? How do you build your proposal to where you can win when it's a at lowest price technically acceptable as opposed to best value.
I'm not sure I can give away our strategy.
Okay. Good answer. Do your best?
I think you do your best. I think you look at, a lot of it has to do with, you can look at different places that you might have those things, where you combine certain facilities or do certain things where you could have like lower rates, especially LPTA typically is a lot of it is services and things like that. So, I think that would drive some of that, some of that strategy also. I'm not a big fan of LPTA, not only just from a Lockheed standpoint, but also with some of the folks that I've seen that, that were in, working with governments that were displaced from the LPTA. I'm not sure that's always serves the best interest to lose some of that technical base because, there's a lower, maybe a slightly lower, cost provider.
Right, in the right environment. And I do think that would be a good question. We'll maybe pose that one again for the panel that's coming up because it really depends on what it is that you're buying. But at the end of the day, it's making sure that we adhere to whatever the requirements are. Right. And
there's a lot of strategies involved with that.
Absolutely. Okay, we got time for just a couple more. So the move to negotiate prime proposals quicker. Okay, we talked a little bit about that earlier. So we don't see a lot of competition on the sub-level. Is it because maybe the government's comfortable with supplier or the fact that it was always done this way? So what are your thoughts on that at the sub-level?
On more competition or removing? One of the things, and I've had this conversation with people, is you don't always have, you don't always have qualified suppliers that, you can interchange. You try to have a group of suppliers that you can compete with each other and make them aware of competing, but it's not always that easy when somebody's building a product for you and has been building it for a number of years and it fits and it does all the stuff to go off and develop a second source for doing that. Suppliers do fall in and fall out, but some of the major ones, really kind of own that area. So it's not as, I think they're always looking for that. They're always looking to bring competition. They're always looking for other suppliers, especially when there's performance issues. But it's not as easy as some people think. And we had that conversation earlier this week about just go get new suppliers. But it's, there's not always a whole bunch of people that say we just want to do, be suppliers to Lockheed or DoD suppliers. It's not, it's onerous when, like they talked about earlier, you get this small supplier and saying, well, now you're going to need to add a whole bunch of people to be compliant with what we're trying to do. Right. Some of the smaller folks don't want to join. We see that in Silicon Valley, right? Some of these real innovators out there are saying, I don't know if we want to play in that game. So I get that, and we try to do that, and our supply chain tries to maintain a robust industrial base, but there are some things that are prohibitive to do in there. So
right, and that's
going to be a good answer, but
no, I think that's a good answer. It's going to impede upon your ability to respond quicker to any government increased timelines as well, right? Your ability to negotiate or compete those subcontracts or those suppliers and get them in place.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes years to qualify somebody to do something that somebody's been doing for 20 or 30 years. It's not easily to replace some of the majors do, like a Northrop Grumman, a payload provider. It's not like you're just going to go find somebody else that's going to, invest billions of dollars in coming up to speed on that. So.
Okay. All right. What is Lockheed Martin doing, if any, to support the PALT initiative? Should we explain that? I don't know who wrote that question. I'll collect the $5 at the break. That'll be great.
I should know that.
The procurement acquisition lead time, is that something that, from a Lockheed Martin, y'all's perspective?
I'm probably, I don't want to make up an answer. So
okay.
I'm probably not the best person.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good.
What is it? What was the
procurement acquisition lead time? That's okay. That's okay. So whoever asked that question, maybe we can talk sidebar.
Yeah.
And maybe with some of the folks.
I didn't bring my supply chain folks, but that is a question that could be answered.
Okay. So I got one last one here. So given the dynamics up and down in recent years, what is the best approach to non-labor escalation? Global insight, internally developed rate? What do you all?
I mean, we do buy global insight. I mean, I think we triangulate. We look at different things. We look at histories. You know, we have people that's what their focus is on. You know, I don't think you can just look at one indices. I think you have to look at a multitude of them. Once again, you probably can't, I don't actually do any work. You know? I mean, it's like I'm not out there doing an estimate. You know, I'm just my job is to make sure that I'm value added to the business area from a corporate standpoint. Corporate staff's role is to make sure you're value added, make sure that as the business areas come forward and say, hey, we have this problem or this issue, that you're off doing that stuff, but actually, you know, getting out there and turning a proposal, you know.
All right. So cost estimating is a very important component in conversation for a forum like this. Any last takeaway for the folks out here as we prepare for next year? Maybe bringing in something a little bit, maybe more in terms of cost estimating?
Well, so one of the things as we go through this, and, you know, like, for example, it's kind of like even preparing what you're going to talk about, because you have some pricing IT specialists and you have some pricers, and, you know, it's kind of like, well, I'm not always sure who I'm talking to, right? Because, like I said, some of the folks are more on the tool side,
right.
Some of them are on the pricing side. You know what? I really like this forum because I like the mix of people here. I've been to other forums, and I'll tell you where, you know, and I'm not talking about, you know, where there's, you know, Beltway bandits that are there trying to generate business and trying to get insights and stuff. But I really like this forum because of the mix of the contractors that are here and people, you know, and now with the government here. I think this is a really good forum. I think continue to build off of what we're doing here, because I don't think there are really good forums for the pricing community. And I think this has a potential for really being excellent. And I think it has been really good. I mean, I've gotten insights here. The people have gotten insights to be able to mix with them. So I'd say continue to do it, because there's not a lot of really good forums for folks. I think this is, right now, is the best one.
Very good. George, thank you so much for your time and your insight.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Wonderful job. Wonderful job.
Thank you.